Good morning, Can I please ask everyone to take a seat? Please, everyone, take a seat now so that we can start into the event. Good morning. Please, everyone, take a seat and make sure your interpretation is working.
Merci beaucoup aux interprètes qui sont avec nous et qui rendent possible cette interprétation en simultané dans les différentes langues. Mettez votre casque, choisissez le bon canal.
Okay, please everyone take a seat and we will start very shortly. Morning. When are we starting?
I think we must have a signal before beginning. They will launch. They will launch a video.
Yeah. So most of you have taken a seat already, and I would ask everyone now to please take a seat. Okay, please take a seat, everyone, and we will start shortly. So we're waiting a few more seconds and then we'll start.
She's coming.
As soon as President Metsola is coming, parce que je l'attrape.
réalisateur un peu nerveux.
Bonjour et bienvenue pour cet événement de suivi.
Good morning and welcome to this follow-up event to the Conference on the Future of Europe. Welcome to everybody, whether you're attending here in person or remotely. Welcome to the European Parliament in Brussels. I do hope you all have your headsets on and have chosen the right interpretation channel, and that you're ready to experience this brilliant day together, especially designed for those citizens who took part in the Conference on the Future of Europe, to learn how the institutions have followed up on the recommendations you made and how they're moving to put them into practice. I'm part of the team that was chosen to moderate the European Citizens panels, and with my colleague we will be moderating today's proceedings.
Merci.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the feedback event of the Conference on the Future of Europe. About 535 citizens made it today to Brussels, despite the strike in Belgium, despite the cold, and also despite the fact that for many of the citizens, for many of you, the conference already finished a year ago. Panel 2 of the Conference on the Future of Europe finished on the 12th of December 2021 in Florence and had 39 recommendations. And I would like to ask all members, all participants who took part in Panel 1, all the citizens, please stand up. Everyone who was part of Panel 1, please stand up. And now I realize I mixed it up. Actually, Panel 2 ended on the 12th of December in Florence with 39 recommendations, but Panel 1, which we just saw, ended on the 27th of February in Dublin with 48 recommendations. So could I now ask the members of Panel 2 also to stand up, please? Then we had Panel 3, which finished on the 9th of January in Warsaw with 51 recommendations. And I would also like to ask everyone who was part of Panel 3 to stand up, please. And last not least, Panel 4, which finished on the 13th of February this year in Maastricht, and they finished with 40 recommendations. And so also all the citizens of Panel 4, please stand up.
Alors, pour la majorité d'entre vous, en fait,
For most of you, the last time you saw each other was at the start of last year. And what we're going to tell you is how work continued in the meantime. Your recommendations, the panel's recommendations, were highlighted by your ambassadors at the plenary conference of the Conference of Europe, and those ambassadors worked with the other members of the plenary conference to discuss the recommendations and turn them into proposals. Who attended the plenary conference? On the one hand, members of the European and national parliaments, representatives from the Council of Europe, national authorities, regional authorities, local authorities, representatives from the European Commission, from civil society, and social partners. A lot of the members of the plenary conference are here today, and we would like to warmly welcome them. Yes, applause, quite right. And I will ask you, ambassadors, please. Last time I'm asking you to get some exercise. Could you please stand so that we can thank you for your work? Thank you very much. And now I would call on all of the citizens of the panels to get in touch with their ambassadors to get more information on what happened. Even if we give you the outline, you can always get more details from them, and that's always a good thing. Thank you.
All members and participants of the plenaries worked on the recommendations and transformed them into the conference proposals, and the final result is 49 proposals with 326 measures which are part of those proposals. And on May the 9th, those proposals were officially handed over to the three institutions, to the European Parliament, the Council of the European Union and the European Commission, and many of you were there on that day in Strasbourg. Today, we are happy to be again in the European Parliament, but this time in Brussels. And we will today ask and hear about what happened to those proposals. So we will have representatives from the three EU institutions to take stock of the follow-up of the Conference on the Future of Europe and to answer your questions. Now, I am very honored to announce and welcome our host of this event today, the President of the European Parliament, Ms. Roberta Metsola. Please welcome her together with me.
Good morning. Thank you, dear Judith and Jacob. Nice to see you here, Vice President Guy, Minister, dear Rosalind, Elizabeth, Normand. Welcome to the European Parliament. On Europe Day of 2021, at the inaugural event of the Conference on the Future of Europe, my friend and my predecessor, David Sassoli, spoke about the importance of a proper and meaningful follow-up to the results of this historic exercise by the three institutions, each at their own levels of competence. He said, and I quote, "The vision of our European project will be the compass that must guide our work in the decade to come." Dear Europeans, I am proud to stand before you all as President of the European Parliament to assure you that this institution is holding itself to its word. We were the first institution to react to your proposals in May of this year and later also in June. Our Constitutional Affairs Committee is busy working on another report which could be voted upon in the next weeks. And today we are gathered here in the House of European Democracy, your house, to take stock of what we had done. Let me start with my personal feedback. I was elected in January of this year. Since then I have met with hundreds, even thousands of people in my role as President. I have met with Prime Ministers, Presidents, politicians and citizens of all ages from all 27 member states. Many of these meetings have one thing in common. They all want to talk to me about the future of Europe. They ask me about the conference, about the proposals that many of you in this room helped form. They ask me about strengthening the links between citizens and their elected representatives, and about increasing the transparency of EU decision-making. One thing has been universally clear: people want more European democracy. They also speak to me about legislation. They ask about climate change and the environment, about the circular economy, about the ban on single-use plastics, about high-speed and night trains, and reducing our dependency on imported oil and gas. They talk about the impact of the pandemic on their lives and ask about the European Health Union, about mental health and about cross-border exchange of health data. People want to see a stronger economy, social justice and jobs, and many of them ask how the digital transition, the Working Time Directive, the Youth Guarantee, and how tax policies that support European industry can help achieve this. They also speak to me about migration, about revising our common asylum system so that we can be fair and humane with those seeking protection, that we can be firm with those who are not eligible, and strong with traffickers who exploit some of the most vulnerable people on our planet. They asked me about the role of young people in shaping the future of Europe, about lifelong learning, voting at the age of 16, sport, the youth check on legislation, about inclusiveness and gender equality. People are worried about the role of Europe in the world, framed in the context of a war in Ukraine, where the implications on our democracy are clear. They ask about our union's security and defence, about cybersecurity measures, about protecting our values, freedom, democracy and the rule of law, about measures to support a pluralistic, free and independent press. Fortunately, many of the building blocks to implement your proposals are already in place. And here let me say that I am encouraged to see that the 2023 Commission work programme includes many legislative proposals relating to what the conference proposed. And history, including recent history, has shown this European Parliament, as co-legislator, stands ready to do its part, diligently, effectively and quickly, in the interest of the 450 million European constituents that it ultimately represents. As I said in May, and I will say it again, when it comes to implementing our citizens' proposals, no suggestions for change should be off limits. Whatever process is required in order for us to get there should be embraced, including a convention. The Commission is also here today and I know that the commitment given is shared by our institutions. Our goal must be to improve and reform our systems. Nothing should be off the table, including treaty change, because vision takes courage. Dear friends, when I look at you all here today, seated in the very same places that your elected representatives vote upon legislation, I am reminded of how important the participatory element of the Conference on the Future of Europe was. Citizens talking to decision makers was undoubtedly an outstanding part of this exercise, but it should not be something exceptional. This is where the European Parliament, made up of 705 directly elected members, needs to do more. Let me give you an example of a young girl who I met recently. As we started speaking, I quickly noticed that she had so many positive ideas about how the European Union can help make things a little bit easier for the people who live in her area. I suggested that she writes to her member of the European Parliament. And she replied, "You can do that?" And sometimes it seems like the only contact that people have with their elected representatives is through a like or a comment on a social media post. Of course, we cannot force citizens to talk to their elected representatives, but I believe we can do more to raise awareness that yes, citizens can write to their members of European Parliament. Yes, citizens can suggest new ideas to them. Yes, citizens can recommend new proposals. And in fact, they should, because that's our responsibility. That is where we need to show in 2024 that what you told us in 2019 we listened to and we worked on and we delivered. The European Parliament is not here just in these buildings. It is in every town and village in our Union. The conference on the future of Europe and the 49 proposals that you presented to us on the 9th of May are not the end. This was not a one-off exercise for the European Union. Your proposals are not some checklist that we need to tick to close the door on the conference on the future of Europe once and for all. Because this exercise was ultimately about readying our Union for the future, whether that be tomorrow, the future next week, next year, or in 10 years' time. There is no end date to the future, and there is no end date to our Union growing and continuing to evolve. What works for EU27 will not work for EU33 or EU36. We have Ukraine, Moldova, the Western Balkans, and Georgia getting ready. But are we ready? The future is a work in progress. So is our Union. And as Robert Schuman said, Europe will not be made all at once. And today I will add that it can never be complete. It grows and develops with each hurdle we pass through, with each breakthrough we achieve, with every little piece of legislation that manages to make our shared space a little bit safer, a little bit fairer, and a little bit more equal. As President of the European Parliament, I can commit to you that we will keep working until we can say that this project is even better than it is today. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much for reminding us of the ambition of this conference on the future of Europe and also the commitments made by the institutions. Today is a wrap-up day, but it's also a staging post along the way as we look at the day-to-day problems facing all of the inhabitants of Europe. In a moment, we'll hear from the three institutions and we'll have an opportunity to go much more into depth in looking into how each of the institutions is taking up the proposals made by the Conference on the Future of Europe. But before that, we'll give the floor to three of you who've been involved in this adventure and who will be sharing their experiences of this conference and as well as their expectations. So without further ado, I suggest we hear from Rosalind, Elisabeth and Normand. Rosalind first, please.
Bonjour à tous.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosalind Ataman-Massens, and I'm from Luxembourg. Before I start, I'd like to start by thanking the three institutions for organising this event. This was a very enriching experience from all perspectives in terms of human contact, socially, politically, cultural, and in many more ways as well. By taking part in the panel, it helped me better understand exactly what the European Union is, what it represents, to understand its institutions and how they work, its representatives, and above all, how important its very existence is. Before I took part in the panel, it seemed very elitist and inaccessible to a normal citizen like me. Now I feel much more involved, and I want to get even more involved going forward. I'm even now managing to tell people around me about the topic. I believe this conference has allowed citizens to realise their role and the place that they occupy within the European Union, and has shown that their voices count. And at the end of the day, we are the future of Europe.
Un grand merci.
Thank you, Rosalind, for kicking off, and we'll hear now from Elizabeth. Come and join us at the podium.
Bonjour à vous tous.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Piacentini. I'm a French European citizen. I have actively participated in the panels, and I'm very happy to bring forward the questions and inquiries and demands from the citizens who participated in this citizens panel. We're very happy to see the 49 proposals actually result in something concrete on the ground, and we want to see this happen as quickly as possible. You owe this to all European citizens who came forward with their aspirations and their conviction. We very much want to see institutions learning lessons and responding to citizens' expectations in their daily lives. To do this, the best would be to identify and prioritise measures that need to be done in the short term and those that can be handled over the longer term, and to explain why. The goal, however, has to be to implement the programme as a whole. We need to organise our work. We need to build the whole building, but these foundations have to be solid. In this spirit, citizens have to be brought closer to the European Union, its institutions, its values. And the starting point is to find our confidence and trust once again. We're seeing an increase in crises, environmental, energy crisis, war in Ukraine. And so it's important to bring citizens together in supporting the European project and to anchor them in their fundamental values. The European Union and its institutions have to be up to the challenge and to provide a definitive response to the aspirations of its citizens. European citizens want to see clear, resolute action on this, and we have to commit to achieving results on the ground. Thank you very much in advance for responding to our questions and our concerns. And if you do this, this will allow us to live together and happily in our beautiful home that is Europe.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And finally, to the opening session, we'll hear from Normand. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Normand Slegsdiņš, and I am from Latvia. I took part in the conference, and I was the ambassador in the group Values and Justice. And from today's event, I expect complete transparency and very exact information on what has already been achieved and what is left to be achieved. If there are certain difficulties in the working process, these can be overcome. If some of the recommendations cannot be implemented, we have to know which ones and why. And we really would like the institutions to tell us how they envisage the fight in the future against various types of discrimination in the member states and between the member states. During the conference, we encountered discriminations regarding language availability, and I am very thankful for that difficulty to have been solved. Regardless of the fact that we come from different member states, we have different languages, we are united. We are united in our attempts to solve these difficulties, and I do hope that we will arrive at a common democracy, that we will be united in it. And we will be looking towards a new structure of the future Europe. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Normand.
Thank you, Normand, and thank you to all three of you. I think these first accounts nicely set the tone and show us citizens' expectations from this step. Before we move on to the question and answer session, because citizens have prepared questions for the institutions, I would suggest we open a conversation with the three institutions who have also participated in this first-time experience at European level. So the Commission, the European Council and the European Parliament. And for that, I'll give the floor to Jakob.
Thank you, Judith. Yeah, as Judith said, and as we all know, the conference has been organized by the three institutions as co-signatories of the joint declaration for the Conference on the Future of Europe. And for now, I would like to welcome all members of the European Parliament, and especially and very warmly Mr. Guy Verhofstadt as co-chair of the Conference on the Future of Europe. Mr. Verhofstadt, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, first of all, thank you very much to the 535 citizens who are here today. We are only missing, how many? 200, I think, 250 or something like that. But I think it's a very good attendance rate. It's even sometimes better than the Parliament itself, the attendance rate. So I'm very pleased that you're all here. And it's also a little bit an emotional moment. Everybody sees friends back that we didn't see for 7 months now. Emotional gathering, because also it remembers me the most emotional citizens panels that I have participated in. That was you remember that in Dublin. Not because of the Guinness beer, that was also part of that panel. Awful beer, in my opinion, but okay. So it's not too many Irish people here, hopefully. But emotional, why? Because you remember that it were the citizens who, as the first in that panel, reacted to the start of the war in Ukraine and said, look, this conference cannot go on if we don't take into account what is happening today in Ukraine. Why? Because these people in Ukraine, the citizens in Ukraine, who are not there in our citizens' panels, but who are in our mind and in our heart, they are fighting for European values. They are fighting for the European ideals better than we do it the last decades in Europe. And I found it a very emotional moment because it was citizens who pressed us to put Ukraine in the middle of our discussions. And in the meanwhile, I think many of our citizens, I even have heard that some of our citizens have entered in politics. So even that happened the last 7 months. But we concluded, dear friends, these conclusions of the conference 7 months ago. And if you look backwards, I think we can say today that there are today more reasons to implement the conclusions of the conference than 7 months ago. And why I'm saying that? Because in the meanwhile, since the end of our conference, what we have seen is the need for social support in the European Union due to the crisis, the need for an energy transition, for an energy union. We have seen more need for defence cooperation inside the European Union. We have seen that there is a need that finally we have a migration strategy in Europe, and we have seen the need for more foreign policy, diplomacy, to end, in fact, what is happening on the ground in the neighbourhood of Europe. So I would say that if you look today to the world, there is more reason to implement the conclusions of the conference than 7 months ago. And I have to tell you that I want to thank the European Commission, because the European Commission has done a lot of work the last 7 months. What they have done is they have put a maximum of proposals, of your proposals, inside the Commission work programme that has been presented a few months ago by Commissioner, the head of the Commission, Mrs. von der Leyen, to the Parliament and to the public. But besides that, we have to be honest, in my opinion, it's not enough. It's very good what the Commission has done, and that's the task of the Commission to do that. But we, as 3 institutions, have a common responsibility. A common responsibility not only to realise 60% or 65% or 70% of this proposal. I had never such a rate at school. That's not the issue or the problem. But it's not enough to say, okay, we have done 60–70% of the proposals have been realised in the working programme of the Commission. What needs to be done is the 100%. All the proposals of the conference are so important that they need to be implemented in reality and in practice. And let's be honest, that means that we need for that to reform the European Union. A lot of your proposals have an obstacle, a hurdle, cannot be realised, because we need to change the competences of the Union, because we need to change the rules inside the European Union to make it happen. I can give a few examples. A health union. A health union is not in the competence of the Union for the moment. A full energy union is not in the competence of the European Union for the moment because of the lack of competences. We have no, let's be honest, a real migration strategy that is agreed between Council and Parliament for the moment. So we cannot implement your proposals on migration. We have not a common foreign and security policy in a lot of areas because of the unanimity problem that we have in the European Union. Whatever we look to it, the most of the proposals that you have formulated will need also a reform of the European Union from the inside. Better rules, less unanimity, more majority decision making, and competences like health, energy and education that needs to be in the heart of the European Union. It's for that simple reason, dear citizens, that we with the Parliament a few months ago have asked for a convention. What is a convention? A convention is not changing the treaties, right? No, a convention is a place where the institutions will meet each other to discuss the reform of the Union. That can lead to a treaty change, that's possible. That can also lead to new competences for the European Union. Hopefully that will be the outcome. But a convention is in our idea necessary to put everybody around the table, giving the conclusions of the Conference of the Future of Europe and saying, okay, to make this happen, what needs to be changed in the Union? Can we continue, for example? I will only give one example to not make it too depressive today. And it is unanimity. As we are speaking today, there are in the Council for the moment 4 important issues blocked because of unanimity. First of all, I give you the list, the fact that we need to give 80 billion of budgetary aid to Ukraine. What is absolutely key, these people are fighting for their country and for our values. They need our financial aid, not only military, but also money to survive in their fight against Russia. That's needed to pay the pensions, to pay the salaries of the military. It's blocked today. We have on the international level finally an agreement on a minimum tax on multinationals. That's one of your key proposals in the Conference on the Future of Europe, saying that everybody has to pay his fair tax. And also big tech companies from America needs to do it. And with that money we can go forward in the European Union with a number of investments, social policies and so on. Blocked in the Council, blocked in the institutions because of unanimity. There is a recovery plan of every country. including Hungary, that needs to be approved. The pandemic is already 2 years ago, so that recovery plan needs to be approved. And at the same time, we need to apply the rule of law in all countries of the European Union, also and certainly in Hungary. There it needs to be applied. These 4 issues were key issues in the European Union. These 4 issues were key issues in the European Union, are linked to each other. I should say typical Belgian policy, but as I am a Belgian, I will not make the reference to that. So blocked because of unanimity and making it possible that 1 country or 2 countries or 3 countries blackmailing the other. So your proposals were good proposals that we share, that we have approved in the conference, need to go over that obstacle, and therefore we have said, let's start to look to a reform, abolish unanimity the fastest as possible, so that finally the wish of the people can be implemented the fastest as possible. So, I go never over my time in the Parliament, so I will do it not now either. But in any way, I have 2 requests. That is, first of all, that you keep the pressure. Keep the pressure not only here in the Parliament, but keep the pressure also to your national parliaments and national governments to make this happen. And my second is that we as institutions take a responsibility, working together, making this happen, so that when we see each other next year, because I would invite all the citizens again next year, and that way maybe we can tell them at that moment so that we can show them that we have made real progress in 2023. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Verhofstadt, d'avoir souligné l'importance.
Thank you to Mr. Verhofstadt for having underlined the conclusions and how the Conference on the Future of Europe can be a driver for change in Europe, and also the discussions that this provokes within the institutions. I think this is very important for the citizens to hear. Thank you for that. I would now like to invite the next speaker to explore how the institutions have taken up our proposals. Minister Beck for the Council of Europe. Mr. Beck is the Czech Minister for European Affairs, and you're currently presiding over the Council. The Czech Republic currently has the rotating presidency of the European Union. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Dear citizens, dear friends, I'm obviously going to be the most dull speaker of today, because my job is not to speak for myself or for the Czech government, but my duty is to represent the common denominator of 27 member states in the Council, 27 member states with different historical backgrounds, political cultures, problems in the social or economic area. So I will have to keep low profile as myself, and I have to speak for the consensus among the member states. It's now time for the institutions to report back and give you feedback on the work carried out since the 9th of May. Today, I'm therefore particularly happy to meet you all and to present to you the work undertaken by the Council for the implementation of your proposals. I can proudly say that the Council has been working in earnest, along with the other institutions, towards the implementation of the outcomes of the conference. As you may know, the Council is the institution composed of members of the governments of the 27 member states of the European Union, who meet in 10 different configurations, depending on the issues being discussed. One of the Council's main tasks is to adopt EU legislation, most of the time as a co-legislator with the European Parliament, based on a proposal from the European Commission, and in some cases as the main decision maker. The General Affairs Council, which gathers the ministers for European affairs of your countries and which I have presided since July, has examined the topic of the conference follow-up at each of its meetings since May on a monthly basis. The Council's work to implement the results of the conference started right after the closing of the conference. Indeed, the Council under the Czech presidency first informally met to discuss this issue just 2 weeks after the beginning of the presidency. Since then, we have worked comprehensively and continuously to identify common ground and positions through a variety of means, whether questionnaires on specific issues or debates of the Council on grander political decisions. We have notably worked on the basis of a very comprehensive and detailed analysis of each of your 49 proposals and 326 specific measures. This analysis helped us to understand what was already being done in the fields covered by your proposals and, most importantly, what remained to be done and how it could be done. The document is public and fully accessible on the Council's website as well as the conference multilingual digital platform. 2 main things came out from this analysis. The first is that a significant number of your proposals actually resonate with existing, ongoing or very soon upcoming initiatives from the EU institutions. The 2019-2024 strategic agenda of the European Council, which provides an overall framework and direction for the work of the Union, is in this perspective very much aligned with the outcome of the conference. The second and probably most important one is that your proposals in the overwhelming majority of cases can be implemented within the established treaty framework, meaning through all the legal and policy-making tools that are already at our disposal. This led the Council to decide to address as a matter of priority this very majority of proposals with a clear objective to provide answers to your main concerns in the most effective possible way and to deliver concrete policies that have a real positive impact on your daily lives. Let me outline a few examples. Under the topic of stronger economy, social justice and jobs, your proposals notably ask for sustainable growth, stronger social policies and inclusive labour markets. No later than this October, the Council adopted, in total alignment with your requests, groundbreaking legislation on adequate minimum wages in the EU, as well as gender balance on company boards, together with the Parliament. Similarly, your call to take decisive steps in the fight against global warming under the theme of climate change and the environment has fed into very important Council actions since May, such as the definition of a very ambitious EU mandate for the COP27 climate summit in November, or agreement with the Parliament on stronger carbon dioxide emission standards for cars and vans. On health, where you advocated for strengthening the resilience and effectiveness of health systems, the Council recently adopted 2 regulations to improve the EU's capacity to respond to future pandemics and cross-border health crises. Finally, the Council has dedicated much effort to address some of your proposals that are particularly relevant in the extraordinary context of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Your proposals on energy called on the EU to reduce its dependency on foreign actors. Member States progressed a lot on the phasing out of the EU's dependence on Russian fossil fuels, adopted a regulation on coordination demand reduction measures for gas in August, and a regulation to address high energy prices in October. Further regulations on enhancing solidarity through better coordination of gas purchases, exchanges of gas across borders and reliable price benchmarks, on speeding up permitting procedures for renewables and on market correction mechanism are to be discussed at the next Extraordinary Energy Council in mid-December. Your proposals under EU in the world called on the EU to assert its ability to issue sanctions against foreign entities and individuals that go against its fundamental principles. The Council worked day and night to adopt 8 packages of sanctions against Russia at a scale never seen before. These are a few examples of significant and very concrete achievements, and there has been more. The Council's document analysing your proposals has been updated this week to outline the actions undertaken by the EU since the 9th of May for the implementation of your proposals. I invite you to consult this document online to have more details about what has been done. I will also certainly have the opportunity to expand on some of them later today during our exchange. So much has been done, and more will be done. Work ongoing as part of the established policymaking procedures. As you may know, EU policymaking is a complex process, and as I said, the Council usually needs an initiative from the European Commission to take action. This is why, at this stage, an important part of the work to follow up on your proposals goes to the Commission first, which is the institution that has the competence to prepare initiatives for EU action. In this context, the Council has been following with great attention the Commission's follow-up work to the conference and has notably welcomed its clear commitment to put forward conference-related initiatives, which materialises in its work programme for 2023. The Council discussed the programme for the upcoming period, and it will, together with the Parliament and the Commission, sign in mid-December a joint declaration on legislative priorities. The Council looks forward to receiving the Commission proposals that will follow up on the conference outcome and is ready to play its full institutional role as part of the legislative process. In addition, although much goes to the Commission for now, the Council has also proactively identified and started to examine the conference proposals for which it could act on its own. This represents a small but no less important part of your proposals. In particular, several conference proposals called for enhancing the EU's decision-making capacity, including in the context of major geopolitical challenges. This is why the Czech presidency has decided, for the first time in years, to initiate discussions on the possible use of so-called passerelle clauses, which are provisions of the treaty that could allow the Council to switch from unanimity to qualified majority voting in certain policy areas, such as expressed in your proposals, foreign and security policy. As it is often the case, this is a flexibility provided by the current treaty framework. This is a complex discussion which needs time, assessment and reflection. Your proposals reflect the sensitivity of the issue and are the basis for our work in this regard. In parallel, I would like to stress that not only the Council as a whole, but also all of its 27 member states are committed to continue the work on the Conference on the Future of Europe at national level. As you know, all member states had actively contributed to the conference process, notably by organising national citizens' panels and national events. Many member states are still intensely working to take forward the recommendations put forward by their citizens at national level in the framework of the conference and are also organising follow-up events in this regard. Finally, let me turn to the conference-specific measures which would require a revision of the current treaties to be fully implemented. These represent, again, a very limited number of the total. The Council has taken note of the European Parliament resolution tasking its Committee on Constitutional Affairs to prepare proposals for treaty amendments accordingly, and already submitting to the Council 2 such very specific proposals. Taking into account this ongoing work in the European Parliament, the Council believes it is important that all the proposals for treaty amendments from the Parliament are ready before the next steps are taken, not least in order to ensure procedural efficiency. This is especially the case in the current international context, which calls on the EU institutions to focus all their efforts on the major urgent challenges posed by the Russian aggression against Ukraine, which a long and complex process like treaty revision would not solve. Against this backdrop, the Council considers that priority must be given at this stage to the 95% of conference proposals which can be implemented without any treaty change, and which will contribute to provide, through concrete European policy, direct answers to the immediate challenges faced by Europeans. Once the Parliament completes its work, the Council will be ready in line with its obligations under Article 48 of the Treaty, as well as its commitment to ensure the best follow-up to the conference, to submit the proposals it will have received to the European Council and to notify the national parliaments. Dear citizens, this is in a nutshell what the Council has been undertaking since the 9th May, to give the most concrete and effective possible follow-up to your proposals. Now you may wonder what's next. As you can see, work is well underway on the implementation of your proposals. Many have matched with existing, ongoing or soon upcoming EU actions. On the other hand, many others do require further action from the EU institutions. You can witness from this event that they are very well received and will be subject to a thorough follow-up. I therefore invite you in the following month to take a close look at the action of EU institutions, including to that of the Council. Look at what we do, dig into the acts we adopt. You will see that a lot actually links to your proposals and in that way contributes to create, as a follow-up to the unprecedented exercise that the conference has been, the future of Europe you have designed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Beck. And last not least, I would like to welcome all members of the European Commission, and most especially I would like to welcome the co-chair of the Conference on the Future of Europe and Vice President for Democracy and Demography, which is Ms. Dubravka Suica, which we all know. And Mrs. Suica, Vice President, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear citizens of all generations across all member states. I want to give you a warm welcome to European Parliament, to Brussels, and it's a great pleasure for me to take part in this big event this morning and to see so many familiar faces again. Since I speak on behalf of European Commission, it's not an easy task to talk after Minister Beck, but also after Mr. Verhofstadt, who gave the tone. So I'll try my best. As you know, we have been working with the proposals of the Conference on the Future of Europe ever since 9th of May. Before we move on to the more detailed feedback on your proposals, I want to take a few steps back. Let us look once again at our point of departure, to look at just how far we have truly come. And together. This has been an unprecedented journey, as all of you know. This also has been a human journey. This has been a journey that has challenged all our lives in many ways. This has been a journey that will now have a direct impact on millions of citizens across the European Union as we follow up on your proposals. Going back a step takes me to a time before COVID-19. From the beginning of my mandate as the Commission Vice President responsible for the conference, I was fascinated by the idea of launching a debate on the future of Europe with randomly selected citizens at the very center. There were many skeptics at the beginning. Many who thought that this could not work or who thought that this would be a threat to representative democracy. Some wanted to ensure that the citizens only had a limited role in the deliberations, including them out of the plenary. Keeping them out of the plenary, keeping you out of the plenary. And don't forget that we did all this in 24 languages. And we had to organize this in a pandemic. And then we also got the war on our doorstep. And it is a remarkable development. The process itself proved the skeptics wrong. And many of those skeptics came to see the value of this deliberative process. We saw in real terms that it adds value when citizens are given the opportunity to deliberate about the key issues they have to face in their daily lives. And you came forward with the 49 reasonable and tangible proposals. And the skeptics and millions of others took note of the concrete proposals submitted to the three institutions. As I have said from the very beginning, citizens want the institutions to listen to them, and then they expect institutions to act. And once we have started to act, they expect the feedback they need. I also said before all this started that providing feedback would be our benchmark for our success. I insisted on devising a feedback mechanism, and so here we are today. At a key part in the journey we have been on together. What was it all for? I'm honored to say that we have some very good news to share with you here today. And with many citizens who participated in the thousands of events held across our union, who contributed also online on the multilingual digital platform. My colleagues have spoken about how their institutions have reacted to the conference in the months since the 9th of May this year. So I will give you an account of the European Commission's follow-up. The first step was the publication of a Commission's communication on the 17th of June, less than 6 weeks after the conference closing event. In this document, we offered an assessment of the conference proposals and a roadmap on how the Commission would follow up and the action, and how the Commission will take action on it. To be credible, the Commission found it essential to stick to the spirit and the letter of what is proposed, without any reinterpretation or selection. In fact, we had already started the job immediately. Just 2 days after the closing event, on the 11th of May, we adopted the European Strategy for a Better Internet for Kids. This included measures that were directly inspired by the deliberations of the conference. We also recently adopted the Youth Action Plan in the European External Action. Crucially, the plan proposes to apply the one-third youth participation rule from the conference to relevant exercises that we will hold with our partners outside the European Union. And we'll listen to the calls for greater citizens' engagement in two crucial ways. First of all, we will strengthen our online engagement by creating a single entry point to all citizens' engagement tools that the Commission currently has and will have at its proposal. The upgraded Have Your Say portal will accommodate all our public consultations, the European Citizens' Initiatives and citizens' panels. It will also include the Child Participation Platform, which we launched in September, and which will provide our youngest citizens with the opportunity to offer their views on the issue that most matter to them. But perhaps most relevant of all, the communication adopted in June embeds deliberative democracy into our policy-making process. From now on, citizens' panels will be an integral part of how we devise policy. This is a key success of the conference and a sign of innovation in democracy at European level. Citizens will make recommendations before we present any key legislative initiative. I believe that it is the first time that an executive body anywhere in the world is embedding such an approach in its policy-making process, and this is our major development. And the first of these citizens' panels will address the issue of food waste. We are currently recruiting citizens through random selection and their work will start in exactly 2 weeks from today, on the 16th of December. Maybe someone of you will be selected. A second citizen panel on learning mobility will be followed in January or February, and then by a third on virtual worlds and the metaverse. And we do not stop here, because your proposals continue to inspire our work. The European Commission has adopted to this new post-conference environment. We have literally changed the way in which we work. President von der Leyen, in her State of the Union address in September, announced herself the first new Commission initiative stemming from the conference. All in all, 35 out of 43 initiatives in the Commission work programme for next year are a direct response or indirect response to the conference proposals. More than 80%. The conference proposals were a key driver of the next year's planning. Yes, I know. Guy said 100% should be done, but we need some actions before that. This is also a very unique innovation. You have literally told us what our work next year should be. And I will stop here because my colleague, Vice President Maroš Šefčovič, will give you some further details on this later. He was in charge of Commission work programme. I should, however, note that while the Commission has the right to propose and initiate EU legislation, its proposals will only become law when there is agreement by the Council and by European Parliament. So we propose and we have to align with the European Council and the European Parliament. This is why we are standing here before you today together, and this is why we are collectively delivering on the outcomes of the conference. I'm quite confident in saying here today that democracy will never be the same again. We have changed it. You have changed it. You, the citizens, have made that happen, hand in hand with policymakers. And to conclude, our follow-up is not limited to delivering new laws or taking other policy actions. The lessons learned from the conference contribute to updating our democratic institutions, making our democracy fit for the future. It is not dramatic to say that globally we face a pivotal moment for democracy. War is raging in our neighborhood. A wave of autocracy sees 1/3 of the world's population living in countries where freedom and openness are being curtailed. We observe the erosion of democratic norms and trust in our democratic institutions. And we see this occurring at all levels, local and regional, national and European. I'm personally sensitive to this, having been elected at different levels of governance myself. However, it's not all bad news, and this is due to one important reason. I'm grateful for this fact that citizens, you citizens, are willing to be more engaged in your democracy, beyond the ballot box, in the fight for our democratic values. Our best allies are our citizens. You are our best allies. You have left us legacy, and we proudly take that legacy forward to make better policies for all our citizens, for all our generations, leaving no one behind and nowhere behind. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. Thank you for having stressed the sustainable changes introduced by COFE in terms of the links between citizens and the European institutions and underpinning European democracy. Thank you to all of the representatives of the European institutions. And thank you for having started to tell us this morning about the practical steps taken to introduce the changes that have been recommended by citizens, and for explaining how this can change all of Europe and change citizens' lives. We'll continue this collective exploration of those points, but before It's unprecedented for so many of us to be here. And so, as an exercise in transparent democracy, we would suggest taking a family photo. So if I can ask everybody to remain where they are, but to rise to their feet, and we will have a wonderful photo to remind us of this day, which is just a stage in the journey, but it's an important stage.
Pardon.